Alrighty. Well, I know I didn't say anything about reviewing this movie this week, and it's one of those films where I've seen it so many times that I don't really need to rewatch it in order to review it. But today I'm going to be talking about the third film in the Evil Dead franchise and the final of the original trilogy, Army of Darkness. Now, for those of you who are watching this video and have seen, I've done reviews of the first two Evil Dead movies and the remake, and I didn't do the movies in order. And the reason why I'm not reviewing this around Halloween next year is that I don't really see this as a horror movie, to be honest. And before I get into that, this is probably a movie I don't think many people know that much about. So I'm going to, well, outside of Bruce Campbell fans anyway. So I feel like I'm just going to explain the plot. And the first off, the Evil Dead series started off as this low budget horror film franchise that quickly morphed into more of a comedic story, more of a comedic product. The first one's a straight up horror film. The second movie has gallows humor laced with some legitimately dark and scary situations. The third movie is like Monty Python and the Holy Grail satirizes Evil Dead. Like they're satirizing Evil Dead, but they're doing it in the Middle Ages. And before I get into what I think works and fails in this movie, I would also like to say the reason why it's called Army of Darkness instead of Evil Dead 3. Sam Raimi even wanted to call this movie The Medieval Dead, but they wanted to change the title of the movie to give it a very different feel and look to it as opposed to the first two movies. So this one takes place right where the second movie left off, with Ash getting sucked into a portal and ending up in. Well, Ash, played by Bruce Campbell from the previous two movies, is now trapped in the Middle Ages thanks to trying to rid the world of the evil. Now, and once again, we retcon what happened in the previous film because we have Ash ending up in the Middle Ages, and instead of people welcoming him as a hero after he defeats a Deadite, they see him as a threat and they take him prisoner. And the rest of the movie, after Ash manages to survive an execution and convinces the people he's on the up and up, they send him out to find the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, or the Book of the Dead, to get rid of the evils of the Deadites in that time period. And then, as returning the favor, he ends up getting sent home. Well, that's the plot. That's what goes on, and I'm not going to say how we get from beginning, middle to end. That's not what a review is about. I'm just going to talk about, as it says, it's a review. So, first off, the comedic tone of the movie, even though it's kind of jarring when you think of the first two films, has some scary moments. This one really, there's only one real scary scene in this movie, and they turn it into a joke the minute you start getting scared. You know, because there's a scene where, without giving too much away, where this weird body horror mutation happens to Ash, where a copy of Ash grows out of his body, and it's kind of horrifying at first because you see an eye in his shoulder, but then it goes from that to a goofy spaz attack between Ash and his evil clone, who is Bad Ash against Good Ash, who's a goody little two shoes. Um, okay, if you've seen the movie, you'll understand why I did that. And honestly, and Zach, if you're watching this review, Zach Keller, I'm just gonna say, I think that scene where Bad Ash starts dancing around like an idiot and starts annoying the Good Ash, I feel like that scene sums up the way you and how many people feel about me when I get to be on the annoying side. And I'm pretty sure, like everyone else, they wish they had a boomstick to blow my head off at that point. um, okay, enough dark, self-deprecating humor. So the movie does focus more on being entertaining and fun rather than being a gritty nightmare or a mixture of comedy and horror. Um, so I think they did that very well. And I think what makes it work so well is that Bruce Campbell, there's never a point where he acts silly. He plays these insane situations straight, and I think that's what makes the jokes work. Because it's this very surreal, bizarre acid trip kind of journey with a lot of Monty Python and Three Stooges humor thrown throughout it. Um, I think one of my major complaints in the movie is the way they portrayed the Ash character. Because in the first movie, he's kind of a person. He's just a guy. You don't really expect him. You're kind of he's just kind of there that surprises you at the end because he barely managed to make it out okay. The second movie, he became more like the Ash we're familiar with, the line quoting badass with the chainsaw hand and the boomstick. This film, they do play up more of the badass hero element. Unfortunately, they also make him a bit of a jerk in this movie. And I'll say this: when Ash is being arrogant, it's kind of you still want to follow him, but it's kind of he is kind of a douchebag to everybody. And at first it's kind of understandable because he is captured and held against his will and almost killed. So I can understand why he would be a little violent and really angry at the citizens in that castle. But I think after a while, it would be nice if he kind of loosened up and softened up a bit. But I feel like they went a little too far with making Ash a jerky idiot. I think they probably turned that dial several notches too far. And another problem I have with the movie is that there's a sacred um, chant that Ash must give before retrieving the Book of the Dead in order to, I guess, finalize everything. And it does go with the joke that Ash can't remember the words, but when he farts around trying to say the phrase correctly, he does say the phrase. He kind of coughs out the last word of the chant, and it's like, yeah, he didn't say the words clearly, he didn't say them perfectly, but he said them close enough for them to be audible and for us to hear it. And yet, when he retrieves the book, all hell breaks loose. So, so not only do you make Ash, you know, an asshole throughout the most of the movie who's willing to abandon these people after he screwed up, but he didn't even really screw up to begin with, so this doesn't make any sense. He okay, the words he has to say is Klaatu Varata Niktu, and he says Klaatu Varata Niktu. So it's like so it's like yeah, he coughed his way around saying the word, but he still said it. So that's kind of a major problem because that kind of creates the dilemma in the third act where Ash decides to stay behind and atone for his mistake, which is a mistake he didn't even make in the first place. So, um, I will say this: it's really hard for me to decide. My favorite movie in the franchise is the second one, and I feel like with this third movie, they did go overboard with the comedy as well as turning Ash's character into a dick, but I still think the movie overall is really entertaining. And Ash's character, as much as he is unlikable throughout the movie, he still kind of has that dumb jock charm that still kind of makes you root for him. And a lot of that is kind of the charisma and the performance of Bruce Campbell. And I think most people when you watch this movie, it's just there to be silly. It's not trying to say anything. It's not trying to scare you. It's not trying to make any commentary. It's just there to be a fun fun waste of time. So that's pretty much all I can say. And I don't know what I'll be reviewing next week, but I'll probably be reviewing. I might see a movie this weekend, or I might start reviewing Christmas movies. I haven't decided yet. So peace.